Okay. Can I get some thumbs up online if you can hear us? I just want to make sure. Maybe. Can those online hear us okay? Some thumbs up if you can. I don't know if they're hearing us. Better? Can you hear us? Can you hear me any better now? You gotta flip yours on.
Can you hear me online?
Oh, got a thumbs up.
Cool.
Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to thank everybody online and in person joining us again tonight. I'm just going to reintroduce myself, even though I see a lot of familiar faces. So my name is Christina. Last name is actually changed to Slate instead of Tokar. So I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the district. Just wanted to come back again with all of you after we got all of your feedback, got feedback from staff members. We've come together with a new design that we're hoping incorporates everything that you guys stressed that was very important to you. So we want to present that tonight, get some last kind of feedback on the layout, and then what we'll be doing is then taking this and doing an estimate on it. So one of the things I just kind of wanted to stress again is we have a $40 million budget to build the school. What we have laid out right now, we have not done cost estimates on. So what we really wanted to do was put together the layout that encompassed everything, make sure there's no other tweaks that want to be made by the staff or parents, and then we'll start our cost estimate. If it comes in over the 40 million, we'll have to look at some things that we might have to start tweaking and changing as far as the layout or removing. If it's under 40 million, we would look at maybe some additional things that we can add. So I just want to start by saying that. Just want to introduce the other people that are here supporting the district tonight. So I have Lori Brandon here as Director of Operations and Facilities. Ms. Jessica Benavides is Deputy Superintendent of Schools. And then we have Rob Crow from Chrisman Construction Company. So there are construction managers that will be on site. Andrew had to leave, but he would be the person that would be on site. We have Mark Alexa from Plant Moran Cressa. Real Point, they changed their name too. And they're the bond owners rep. So what that means is basically myself and Lori, we don't have enough time to manage all of the construction projects throughout the entire school district. So we hire on a representative that represents the district on our behalf with our construction managers, our architects firms, that sort of thing, to make sure the district is getting what they need and what they want. Other than that, I have Sammy. I'll let her introduce herself, and then she'll take it away with the presentation.
Oh, all right, there we go. Hi everyone, how are we doing tonight? Good to see you all again. As Christina said, my name is Sammy Shashalski. I am a design architect and a project manager with King Scott Architects. So we're working with the district on several projects, including the new Lewton that we're working towards. So like Christina said, we're gonna take you through the steps we kind of taken to get where we are today, the feedback we've received, the big takeaways you guys have shared with us, and then a new planning concept that we want to share with you all, make sure we're hitting the targets there based on your feedback. And I will dive right in. So I'll try to take a little bit of questions and comments throughout. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and I'll try to get it answered right away. And then if that does go on too long though, we'll circle back at the end because I do want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So let me see. This is not moving forward. Let's see. There we go. All right. Just for the sake of reference, if we need to come back, I've just got a couple aerials here of your current Lewton site. You guys, of course, are very familiar with what you have already. So these are here more just for reference if we need to jump back and see what does that look like now. Touching on timeline. So we've been engaging with you all since early this spring through several engagement meetings. We did a little bit of work before we came to you the first time. We are hoping to continue the design process now through about March of next year. So again, right now it is a planning concept. We still have a lot of work to do on the design side to take things into 3D, figure out what that looks like, figure out the building materials, what the spaces inside look like, what the interior finishes look like. We need to really lock down what it looks like in terms of the arrangement of the spaces and their adjacencies to each other before we dive too deep in any of that. So the goal is to have all of that sorted out though, now through March of next year. And then we'll kind of switch gears and jump into the documentation. So that's where we'll create the documents that have all the nitty-gritty details of how the building gets put together. That's what the trades will use out on site for the construction of the building. The demolition of the current Lewton will or is slated right now to start next summer. So this will be the last school year in this building. And Christine, I don't know if you want to touch on swing space quick.
Maybe, there we go. So I've mentioned this before in other meetings, but just as a reminder, the old Wood Creek School is the swing space for Lewton while Lewton is being built. So we did a lot of renovations over there. It has air conditioning for one, and a roof that does not leak for two. So that'll be the swing space for 3 years while Lewton is being built. So just a reminder, this is the last school year that this building in itself will hold Lewton students. And then we'll move to that space and then move back in when the new school is built.
So with that, the demolition on this site can start next summer. So there'll be an early demolition package to capture that scope of work for the trades to move forward with that. As we're wrapping up that documentation on the building, with bidding out to all of the various trades and contractors happening next fall, with construction starting to follow that. So construction will start probably towards the end of next year, but we'll really, really ramp up spring of the following, and that's when you'll really start to see things coming up out of the ground for the new Lewton on the site. Being a building as large as this, it does take a lot of time to build a project of this size, so we are anticipating construction through the summer of 2028, meaning that once the building's done, the district will have time to move furniture in, move staff back in, and open to staff and students for fall of 2028. If you were with us last time, you'll know that the district laid out some non-negotiables. These are things that will happen on this project. There are things that are standard across all new construction projects in the district and really are just in the best interest of the project overall. So these are the parameters that we have to work within. Lewton will be a pre-K through 8th grade school. There are other various decisions that will be made and help to standardize things across the district. So that's for maintenance, that's for ease of use, that's for because they're best practices for durability. So there will be some things that are just decided as a district standard, and that can range from anything from, security decisions to plumbing fixtures, those sort of things, getting into the nitty-gritty. The site will be fully fenced at the perimeter, so that's something that the district is looking to do for safety across several of its school properties. Again, kind of preserving that site for the safety of the children during the school day. That does not mean that it can't still be opened up for neighborhood and community use after school ends. That is still part of the plan there, but during the school day, making sure the children are safe across the site when they're out playing at recess, lunch, all that. The goal here is also to have small learning communities, and what that means is keeping like ages with similar age groups. So again, we've been looking at that as kind of a pre-K through 2 area, a 3 through 5 area, and a 6 through 8 area. And I know we heard a lot of feedback last time about keeping those older kids a level of separation away from the younger kids as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. In general, we're looking at 2 sections per grade level, meaning that this is a 500 to 600 kids max in the building with all of those classrooms. And the biggest one, which we cannot stress enough, that the all-in project budget for this effort is $40 million. So that means that all of the district's expenses toward this project must come in under $40 million. That means the construction itself is probably somewhere in the 35-ish range, give or take, and that there's a whole other amount of money there that goes to things like buying furniture and fees and all sorts of other stuff, district expenses to make this happen. Any questions on those items? Keep moving. Get to the good stuff.
We had questions about that last time, and,
Sorry, just so people know.
just a quick question about the fence. Will it be similar to what exists at some of the other schools? I noticed a new fence was put in at Riddle, and so that's the look. Okay.
Yep. It's a decorative black metal fence.
Yep. Decorative metal fence for what's kind of community facing, but maybe along the tree line is black coated chain link. So we've done both at our sites, but the stuff that's kind of hidden is the black coated chain link, and then the more decorative fence for everything that's community facing. Thank you.
Just as a recap, we won't spend a lot of time on this, but this is just talking about the steps we've gone through to get here today. So if you recall, we came to you all back in May with an initial discussion about what this project would look like. At that point, we were kind of focused on this campus concept, which we definitely heard a lot of feedback on, that there was a lot of concerns with, a lot of caution around not wanting the kids to have to go outside in between classes to get to those shared spaces. So we had looked at several options there, took that feedback and came back to you guys in July with another conversation focused on just what level of enclosure was needed between those different age groups, between those different learning communities. And again, it was stressed to us then that the priority was to keep kids in between classes inside of school, have that option for them to be inside all the way to all those shared spaces, and more pointedly, to keep it so that those older kids did not have to travel through the younger kids' space in order to get to the shared spaces or at any point throughout the day. So with that, we sort of went back to the drawing board towards the end of July. For anyone that was here, we met here on site at the Lewton gym, and we started kind of with a clean slate and said, okay, what do you guys want to see in the building? What do you want to see on the site? And for both, we kind of did a brain dump. Everything that was mentioned, everything that was said got written down on the list, and then we asked you to prioritize. Both staff and community members, families had the opportunity to kind of vote and put a first, second, and third priority for inside and outside. Also, with that last engagement session we had kind of three big takeaways or three big questions we were looking for the feedback on. And these are things that moving forward will be non-negotiables in this project. This is what we heard loud and clear from you guys as must-haves for Lewton to be a successful project. And we will continue to prioritize these as we move forward, even if other aspects were to change. So we asked about the campus model versus the traditional school model, and we heard loud and clear again, it was all one building, it was a traditional school model you guys wanted, that the students were all connected, the building was all connected, that there might be opportunities to go outside, but really we wanted a single building here that kids could move between to get to all of the spaces they might experience throughout the day. And then we heard, again, that those middle school students, those 6th through 8th graders, the priority was to keep them separated from the younger age groups for both the middle school experience that they could have by being in a kind of a separate area, handling their schedule and how they utilize their classrooms a little bit differently, and also just for safety of the younger kids, keeping those age groups separate. So we heard you loud and clear those, and we'll be moving those forward in the project. Getting into the details from last time, the list on the first column was everything that was mentioned regarding the wish list for the spaces inside the building, either spaces or just aspects of the building that you guys were really looking for. And then again, we had everyone vote on a first, second, and third priority for those inside aspects. So I kind of did a ranking, a separation here of everything that had 5 votes or more is highlighted in white. Everything with 2 to 4 votes was in that medium gray color, and the darker gray represents everything that had 1 vote or less. So again, we'll look to incorporate what we can into the project across all of these, obviously prioritizing the things towards the top. And what you're all waiting for, we will go over the proposed new layout for Lewton. So I do want to focus on the building first, and then we'll go big picture and talk more about the site. But the building arrangement, the spaces that need to be there, that all comes first, and then we'll work with the site after those spaces are determined. So I'm going to try to go through all of it, walk you through it kind of space by space. I know it'll be a lot to digest, so I'm happy to pause for questions after. And I will do my best not to miss anything here. So again, we talked about a secure vestibule, a main point of entry that everyone will be coming in and out. That's located right here at the top of the page in the blue, coming into the building through that secure vestibule. We've got an office suite off to the side of that. So that's your principal, a receptionist, a nurse's station, security office in there, a conference room, a staff workroom, all within that office area. Going down on the page, kind of in the middle of the blue area, we have the main toilets for the building. We have a group restrooms there, or boys and girls or men's and women's, as well as some individual use toilets and other support spaces, mechanical, technology closets, janitor's closets, centered in that space there. Just to the right of that, you've got the kitchen. So that's got the freezers, everything like that needed for the kitchen, as well as the serving space that the students would go through to get their lunch, which is in the bottom left-hand corner of that overarching square rectangle area that is the kitchen. Just to the south or below that is the cafeteria space for the students to use, again coming through that servery and into the cafeteria with their food or coming straight in. And then next to that, we've got the music space with some instrument storage, and there's a large storage space off the cafeteria there. So we may have talked about this previously, but the idea is that with the music and cafeteria space, it's set up in a way that that cafeteria can also be used for large gatherings, any school events, any holiday performances, things like that, cultural performances, where you could set up a stage platform and rows of chairs, and using that music room as kind of a back of house space, if you will, for the students to come out. So that's these two spaces kind of working in tandem to do that. Sticking in this blue area, we've got another grouping of back of house spaces there. So that's your receiving area where deliveries would come in, mechanical and electrical rooms in that space there. And then to the north of that, we have a staff space, so the staff lounge area, as well as a library. So that was another big takeaway from our previous meetings that you guys were really looking for, a designated library space to keep books in that was usable by everyone. And so we put that right up, prominent on the corner of the building there, to be used by everyone. Yep. Jumping over to the west side of kind of this main north-south hallway there, we've got a resource room, as well as some support offices and a sensory room. We've got the gym space, which is a middle school size competition gym. It's a very good sized gym for a school of this size. It's got, of course, the full court as well as 2 sets of cross court, so 6 hoops in all to be used in that gym, a small section of bleachers. We've also got locker or changing rooms for boys and girls there with 1 shower and a toilet room in each, as well as a gender neutral, or it could also be used as a ref's room if you were to have a competition there, locker room and changing room as well. An office for the gym and the gym storage. To wrap up the blue area, we've got an art room with some art storage, an ESL room, and a small area of outdoor storage that would actually open to the outside to support this pre-K playground space. So instead of putting like a separate storage shed or something in that pre-K playground, building that into the footprint of the building for all the playground equipment and toys they would have in that space, bikes, what have you. Because of the way the space was arranged, we have this opportunity to potentially create an outdoor classroom there if things remain in that layout. Again, that's not built space, it would be open to the outside, but if things stay as planned, that would have an opportunity to do that there. I'm going to continue on, but before I do, any questions on the shared blue spaces that I just covered, this kind of main area? Yes?
Yes, it would be. The cafeteria would be used by all grade levels. Yep, different times, obviously, so lunches would be set for different age groups to go at different times, so that there's keeping that bigger kids away from the littles, that sort of thing. Pre-K eats in the classroom.
Pre-K eat in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Any other questions?
So can you, Brittany, you did restate what is the ESL room and what is RSC room?
So this is the resource room up here. The resource room, so that's, yeah,
It's a special education, it's a resource room for special education services. And then the ESL room is the room for pull-out for students whose primary language is something other than English.
English second language.
Yes.
All right. Go ahead.
Oh, on the buses? Yeah, that's something we have to work with the bus company about, and like your principal and seating charts to figure out where the little kids sit on the bus and where the big kids sit on the bus. But that's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
Okay. Any more questions on that blue area? Otherwise, we'll continue on through the rest of the building. We can definitely circle back if more questions come up. So starting to the south, we have the 6-8 or middle school classroom wing there. Coming in off that space, we've got a science room with some support spaces for that, a couple of designated offices for middle school support staff. We also have a group of toilet rooms, single use, and group toilet rooms in that wing, so they wouldn't have to leave that area to go up into this building or anywhere else to use the restroom during the day. We have another resource room within that space at the moment, and we've got a handful, I believe 8 additional classrooms for the middle school curriculum. So again, you know, giving those middle schoolers kind of that middle school experience, letting them rotate around through classes for the different subject matters versus having a single classroom that they're kind of set in throughout the day. This classroom wing also does have lockers out in the corridor there in the hallway for the 6th through 8th graders to use for storing their personal belongings. Because of the arrangement of this, we also were able to create this dining courtyard, which is fully fenced in to capture this kind of rectangle of space. So the idea here is that that could be developed off the cafeteria to have some additional seating area. So the cafeteria is plenty big to see all the students, but provide another opportunity for students to go outside during lunch, eat outside potentially, get some of that fresh air at lunchtime during the day. Moving up to the pre-K through 2nd grade wing, we've got 2 pre-K classrooms, 2 kindergarten, 1st and 2nd. This classroom wing is a little bit different in that it's got the toilet rooms within the classrooms themselves. So for those little kids, we've got a single-use toilet room each off of each of the kindergarten, 1st and 2nd, and then the pre-K each have 2 single-use classrooms each. We've also got a staff toilet room in that corridor as well as some storage rooms. We also have an access from there, a set of doors out to the pre-K playground, so these pre-K students can just come across the hall and out into this kind of knuckle of the courtyard there, that corner of the courtyard there, for their access. The way that this gym is situated with the classrooms around it, it does keep it a path so that 6th through 8th graders coming up to use any of this space really have no paths crossing with these, the rest of the students here. They're kind of approaching everything from a different direction. and having the opportunity, like if the 6th or 8th graders had gym per se, you could have them enter in from the south doors at the same time that the younger kids were leaving through the north doors, and you wouldn't have to have them kind of cross paths at all. Jumping onto the 3-5 wing, which is what we've got left, we've got some space in this, I'm calling it the knuckle here, this kind of bend in the building that has the group toilet rooms as well as single-use toilet rooms there. We've got a little bit of space there. We've currently reserved that could either just be a flexible collaborative space or because this building is so long east to west and the changes in grade we have on the site, there is a potential, at this point we think we can avoid it, but there's a potential that we may have to step this classroom wing down just a couple of feet. So it wouldn't be like a whole floor of different, you wouldn't need an elevator or anything like that. It'd be 2 to 3 feet, and you would create some accessible ramping and stairs in there if needed, if we need to drop that floor plate. Again, as things stand right now, we're doing everything we can to avoid that. We think we can, but it's something in the back of our minds that we have to work through as the elevation of the land changes across the site that we've got to work with. Going back to this 3-5 wing, again, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classrooms there. This, again, has the toilet rooms out in the shared space with lockers for this grade level as well. Not the cubbies in the room. Oh, I didn't mention that on the pre-K through 2. The pre-K through 2 all have cubbies within the classroom for storing their personal belongings, and the 3-5 and the 6-8 will both have lockers out in the hallway, and then again a resource room for that grade level. Each of these classroom wings has a set of doors between them. We will have to keep them available for free egress in the case of a fire or an emergency, but throughout the day they can also be controlled with access control so that more or less the students can't wander freely into the rest of the building. We will get to the site and I will dive deeper into that, but for now I want to focus on the building. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? Thumbs up, thumbs down, like, don't like? Yes. Go ahead. So into the cafeteria, there is a set of doors here that come straight in from the hallway. Or, yes, the servery where they would get their food if they're getting food at school. There'd be 2 sets of openings, overhead doors here to come in, go through the food lines, and then into the cafeteria. And they could approach that either down this hallway, so if you had a long line of students that you needed to queue up, you could run them through this hallway so that they're not out in the middle of the space, but there's also a direct path in that way. Yes? We're going to dive deeper into the site in a minute, and we'll talk through what that could be or is at the moment. Yep.
And then, is this all within the existing footprint of the school district property, or does it include some of the park?
Yes, it is all within the school district property. This is not at all touching the park site. This line right here is that boundary line. Any other questions, comments, concerns, likes, dislikes? Are we getting closer? Nothing online? Okay. Well, hearing nothing, I'm going to keep moving. If you guys do come up with some questions, let me know and we can circle back. We've already gone through this, but I just wanted to show explicitly all of those things that were requested as kind of that wish list, pointing some of them out directly. So if someone was looking at this without me talking through it, they could see where those things are. A couple things to note that were on that priority list or wish list that aren't explicitly shown on the plan yet, but are still being considered. We're not at a point that we know what the building materials will be yet. We know that there is a desire for those to be sustainable, and we can talk a little bit more about what that means and what those could be. But that is on our radar. Obviously, budget is a factor in all of that, but we are keeping it top of mind. Temperature control was stated. That's basically a non-negotiable too. There will be temperature control. It will be air conditioned. It will be properly tempered within the building. There'll be comfort for that. So yes, we will have that. Drinking fountains and fill stations throughout, yes, absolutely. They may not all be shown on the plan yet. Those are kind of little things we work in at a little bit later after we lock in layout, but we'll have them in each of the classroom wings as well as the main space throughout the building. There'll be lots of bottle filling stations and drinking fountains. All right. Moving further into the building. Again, sustainable approaches, sustainable materials. I know that we don't have explicit answers for you all on this yet. It's all things that are being considered and, like Christina said, are highly dependent on budget. So some of these have cost implications to them. Some of these things will be happening either way, and some of them are still things that are on the table but are yet to be determined. So solar, I can tell you, can we say 100%? 100% there will be a solar array on this site that works with the building. That's something the district is doing across several buildings in the district. The goal being that that solar installation will offset almost entirely the electrical bill, the electrical cost of the building. So yes, there'll be solar on this project. Geothermal, that's something that we're still considering. Again, a higher upfront cost in terms of construction, so we can't guarantee that will be a part of the project. We are doing geothermal at the Willow School right now, so that is a part of the scope there. Like Christina said, this project has a very similar budget to Willow. This is also more square footage in the building right now than we have at Willow. So as we try to align those things, we have to make some judgment calls about where we spend the money to get you all of the spaces that you want.
Yep, so I just want to kind of add on top of what Sammy was just saying, just to give you an idea, Willow that we're building is roughly right now 10,000 square feet less than the plan that we've shown you, and that's coming in just under 40 million. So just to give you an idea of where we're at cost-wise, that's something that we're going to need to look at, but we wanted to make sure that we are implementing and stressing that the few things that Sammy said in the beginning, no matter what, we will keep the middle school students away from the younger age students. There will be separate spaces for gym and cafeteria. There will be a standalone library, and it's a single building instead of there being multiple buildings. So as we move forward with this, obviously there might be some things that we need to do to the site plan, to the layout, different things to possibly remove some square footage in ways that is not that noticeable, change site planning, that sort of thing, to keep it in the 40 million range. But we wanted to be very upfront that as this building stands that we're showing you, even though we don't have estimates just yet, it is roughly 10,000 square feet larger than Willow, and Willow is coming in around like 38, 39 million, so just under 40 million.
Yep. So jumping back to this, natural solar orientation, that's something we did, or we're able to do very explicitly at Willow because we had the individual buildings, so everything is oriented so that classroom has north and south windows. It increases the natural light getting in with kind of limiting the amount of heat gain into those spaces. We do have for the middle school wing and the pre-K through 2 wing that same north-south orientation here, so there is some of that. However, the 3 through 5 wing, because of this arrangement, is not quite as ideal for that orientation, but it's still something we're keeping in mind for sustainability and just efficiency in the building overall. You will have LED lighting. That's a non-negotiable. That will happen. Same with white or light colored roofing. There are some, I think, tax credits and other incentives associated with that, so it's something we'll be looking at and prioritizing for any flat roofing areas on the building that we move forward. And then again, for the building materials themselves, we're too early to tell you what that will be. We know mass timber has been mentioned, and that's something that we have looked at. However, the costs of doing mass timber are significantly more than what we're seeing in a more standard construction. So as we prioritize getting the spaces that we need For Lewton, mass timber is likely not on the table to make that happen. But we will be considering other materials, other finished products, things like that, that prioritize sustainability. Any questions on the building itself before I jump to site? Yes, over here.
I don't remember if it was asked before, but Willow is a campus style, right? And we're doing it's traditional. And I think that the question was asked before, how does that impact cost? And well, I don't remember what was the answer.
Yeah, so it's hard to say explicitly. There are factors that both help cost and hurt cost in doing that. So one thing with Willow, because it is the separate buildings, you don't have hallways or corridors connecting them all, which means that you are likely saving some square footage by not building those connecting corridors, if you will. However, being 4 standalone buildings, the amount of perimeter or exterior wall construction is likely greater, and that usually has a higher construction cost than, say, interior walls, right? So if you make a bunch of little tiny square boxes, it's much more efficient, or less efficient in terms of the outside perimeter than one big rectangle of the same area, right? There's also more infrastructure costs that potentially go into Willow's model of breaking them up into individual buildings. Things like piping and different connections for the utilities have to be run all the way across the site then to pick up those various buildings, versus bringing it into one building at one spot. You're likely duplicating some equipment, some utilities, things like that on the campus model that we won't see here. That being said, we did, try to address things efficiently with other aspects at Willow in terms of the materials we used on the exterior and all of that. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we approach Lewton's as well. Yes.
So with the sustainable elements that are being considered here, I'm wondering what factors are going into the cost determination, because so if where we're going is long term, what's the lifespan of the building? Is it 40
Yep.
years or so, and you think about the cost savings, energy-wise, heating, and so on, over the 40-year time span, is that being compared to the cost up front? So the question is, how are you making the determination that this is too expensive? Is it just, well, it's more than the cost of this up front, or are you looking longer term?
So basically, we absolutely do look longer term. We know that putting in more sustainable stuff will help for the long term for bills and that sort of thing. But when we're looking at actually building this right now, we have 40 million, and that's all we have to build it. So we're kind of in the middle of that. We can't borrow from the future right now to make those all of them happen at the moment in time. So yes, we absolutely do look into the future, cost savings, environmental impact. We are looking at all of it, but we only have what we have to actually spend at the moment in time. So yes, we're looking at both, but I can't borrow an extra $10 million from the future to build all of the sustainability measures now, knowing that that'll pay us back in time. We don't have the access to get that in our hands.
Yep. So it's really making a best judgment call based on all those factors as we move forward, getting you everything you need to make it successful while making the best decisions we can for the future of the building and for the environment and everything else, the quality of the education the students are receiving. Okay. If we're good here for now, is there any questions online before I keep going? Okay. We're going to jump to the site side of things. So just like we did for the building, covering what was talked about during the last engagement session we had. So again, the wish list on the far column there. Again, items in white had 5 votes or more. Items in the light gray, 2 to 4 votes. And items at the bottom, 1 or less vote. And then I'll dive into the detail after I go over the site about which items of these have shown up on the site so far. But hitting on some of the top priorities, a multi-use field or soccer field, basically a big green play field for the students to use, was the top priority. Having multiple playground areas based on grade level was a top priority that was voted on and discussed last time. The kids, I recall, really strongly voted for a zip line, which we are looking to include something in the playground that is one of those zip lines, for lack of better terms, where you either sit on it or hang on it and can glide across. So that feedback was received. We actually added that to the Willow playground as well, based on the high desire for that we heard here. Natural play space, we've taken that into account. We don't know exactly what that'll look like yet, but something on our radar. Accessible playground equipment, there will absolutely be accessible playground equipment. Again, exactly what that is and how much is still to be determined. We've got some placeholder equipment, I'll call it, on the playground right now that's based on what's going on at Willow, but that will be a whole process on Lewton itself to determine what all equipment we move forward with here will likely be similar to Willow in some ways. Minimizing paved space, so again, going back to just keeping the site green. If you recall, one of our early versions had a designated bus loop up in the corner that we didn't want to add that much pavement, so we are still exploring the curbside bus drop-off with a pull-out area along Lewton Place there. That's something that we have to work through with the city. We all agree that that would be a great option to keep additional hardscape surfaces off the site, keeping it close to the door. We're all on board for that as long as we can get the city to buy in, and there'll be a few obstacles to work through there, but we will do our best to make that happen. Let's see, where are we at? Paved space, children's gardening space. This one's not showing up on the plan at the moment. One of the aspects that come with that is unless there is a designated program in place to kind of maintain that and run it, it's something that we get nervous about planning a space for that then doesn't receive the required maintenance and just kind of gets a little bit run down, if you will. So not to say that that can't happen here, but it's something that we might be a little bit more hesitant about creating a designated area for as we move forward. Gaga pit, here those are a hit, so we've got one of those shown. Outdoor classrooms, amphitheater, right now we've got both of those shown in the plan, and we'll go over that. Track or walking path, we've got a walking path shown throughout the site and a 50-meter sprinting track, if you will, we can talk about. Native plantings and trees will be considered. Obstacle course may show up somehow on the playground as we finalize that. Curb cut for buses, we just talked about that. Property fence, we will have around the perimeter. Again, we already talked about what that'll look like based on what's happening across the district. Rubber playground base. So where we're looking at that right now is the pre-K playground may have a rubber playground base. The older kid playgrounds, we may have some element of that for added accessibility to get to the accessible equipment. It's very costly to do rubber playground base across very large playground areas. So there might be some elements of that, but likely not the whole thing. Basketball court, sustainable outdoor materials, a covered porch or lobby, and someone requested for a large parking lot, and then that got no votes. So not a priority there. So zooming out to look at the site. Again, I will try my best to cover it all, and then I'm sure it'll be a lot to digest, so we'll stop for questions. The parking lot overall is the exact same footprint size as the current parking lot. However, we've pulled the drive up through the middle, out and along the front of the building so that you have a longer queuing lane for parent drop-off coming out to Lewton Place, and then kind of eliminating that cluster of the traffic trying to come through and back out. And then there's a little bit of green space that currently exists as we optimize the amount of parking in relatively the same space there. That's the current plan for the parking lot. As we get down and around the front of the building, I'm showing a couple areas that we could designate for some landscaping. Again, what exactly that would be yet, we can consider some rain gardens or natural plantings, yet to be determined, but some kind of focal landscaping there. Coming around this side of the site, again, we've got that bus queuing area for 5 buses. We're working through with the city in hopes that we can make that happen. We likely have a loading area that comes into this receiving room there, and then a service yard, which would be screened that would have a generator and transformer in it for the electrical service to the building, dumpsters, and the idea here is that the trash, the garbage trucks could pick up those dumpsters without having to enter that service yard from that bus lane. We've talked a little bit about that dining courtyard, a space for students to eat outside during lunch while maintaining or being contained into that space. Again, property line would have a fence all the way down and around. And then also fencing that kind of encloses the playground area without creating any blind spots. So we want to make sure that when kids are out at recess, that they are in an area that can be clearly seen and aren't any like corners behind buildings that they can disappear behind. So that's kind of helps determine the location of the fences so that we don't have any of those blind corners for safety out on the playground. Coming kind of to this protected indoor or protected playground space within this kind of courtyard element of the building. You can see we've got walking paths kind of connecting the different playground elements together. Large play field, that was that top priority. There, a gaga pit, basketball court with an amphitheater for seating. Some areas we can look at introducing more natural play areas. Designated playground spaces that are broken out by age-appropriate equipment with a dedicated pre-K playground, again, accessible for those pre-K students. A 500-meter dash running track along that side there. And then we'll look at trees and planting and natural materials across this. I also just want to add, before I open it up for question, part of the reason we've come to this layout is the idea of creating protected outdoor space that has a sense of enclosure in it, right? So kind of screening from the roads and creating a space that keeps the traffic noise and all of that away from the kids when they're outside, creating a more pleasant outdoor space. Yes. 50. Did I misspeak? I apologize, I misspoke there. Thanks for correcting me. Yes.
So, sorry to cover this before, but
It's okay.
what's the front of the school? Is it on Mount Hope?
Faces Mount Hope.
Yeah, this would be the front of the school to the north. I mean, both sides will be pleasant to look at from the street, but this will be the front of the school, yes.
Right now, it's opposite, correct?
Yep, this is the main single point of entry. That will be a front door, and it'll be very obviously a front door. There'll be signage, probably some sort of canopy, lots of things that signify that this is where visitors and parents and students should enter the building.
And then on the, in the play area, in the landscape area, is there a designated track or, path you're walking down that's a different surface based on the concept? Then you've got boxes around two different playgrounds, is that considered part of it? Or is it just the main,
Yeah, I think the whole thing could be looked at as a walking track. Like if you're wanting to walk and kind of stay away from the busy areas of the site, I'll say, you could kind of walk this path in a loop. But yeah, we've kind of created a network of a walking path that connects out to the exits from the building as well. I know all current buildings don't comply with this, but a lot of times as we're building new buildings, the city really likes, from a safety standpoint, that we create accessible paths from the building doors. So as much as possible, we like to connect the sidewalks to get students out and away from the building. So if hypothetically in an emergency, someone was leaving from a wheelchair, they have an accessible path to get away from the building, leaving from any door.
Part of my question too is it certain amount that's thought to be asphalt versus concrete or?
We haven't.
Yeah, we haven't gotten into the exact materials yet for that. I'm trying to recall what we have for the walking path at Willow, but it's not coming to me at the moment, whether it's asphalt or concrete. But yeah, that's still something that's being worked through. I do have another slide following this that we talk about different sustainable site measures that we're considering. So we are, maybe not necessarily for that, but looking at where we could do permeable pavers or paved drain or something like that. If the soils is a factor in allowing that, right? Seeing what kind of soils we have on the site when we do some geotechnical testing to see how absorptive it would be to collecting that rainwater before we spend money on those measures that may or may not be efficient. Yes?
Oh, I was just going to add on to that, that currently the walking path as it's used now is used for cross-country practice. That's true, yes? Yes.
Okay.
I'm asking our
The resident expert?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So just kind of keep that into consideration with what amenities are available out there because it's used now that, more than a 50-yard dash space.
Yeah. Yep, and so, yeah, the length of the entire path would be much longer than that. We've just created that designated space for sprinting or what have you. That's that 50-meter dash space, so. Any other questions at the site for a moment? I'm just gonna click to the next slide, which again is the same thing, but I've called out some of those priorities explicitly. So everything from that voting page, things that were listed there. Just if someone were looking at this without me narrating, can see where those things start to pop up on the site. Questions, comments? Yes?
So it could just be that this isn't something that you put on the map yet, but I'm wondering if there's going to be a spot for bicycle parking.
Yeah, that's not something we put on there yet, but I think we will.
Yep, so yeah, what we're looking at doing right now is adding bicycle racks to all of our schools. So yes, there will be, when the new build happens, there will be a bike rack available.
Good question, though. Any other questions, comments, concerns on the site? Yes?
Can I ask again about the model-looking area around the dining courtyard? And I'm so sorry if I missed that. I had
No, you're okay.
But I didn't catch what that surface is.
This area here?
Yeah, is that?
Again, we have not determined any of the surfaces on the site yet. I think that is an opportunity that if the soils allow, that would be a beneficial use of the money, that would somewhere we could look at like a permeable paver so that rainwater can soak back into the ground and minimize our stormwater management system. But that, again, is highly tied to the quality of soils we find when we do the geotechnical investigation, which is in progress, so.
Okay. Is there anything, like, when we look at outdoor classroom, dining, courtyard, some of these areas, amphitheater, that states you can't just have grass or natural landscaping? I mean, I guess the question is, are you tied to doing something that costs additional money and materials like permeable pavements or, pavers and things like that?
I think it's always balancing the amount of maintainability in terms of, if it's a space that needs to be cleared for accessible access with maintaining those lesser hard surfaces. So I don't think there's anything that absolutely has to be a hard surface that we're showing here. I'm assuming you would want your walking track to be, but can correct me if I'm wrong. But no, I think there is currently flexibility in all of the site materials that we're looking at. Again, highly dependent on budget and the soils. Is there something that you would prefer to see not as a hardscaped surface?
I think the less impervious surface, the better. And I kind of push back a little bit on the notion that, pavement or pavers or something that is hard is less maintenance or somehow long-term cost savings versus just natural grass and leaving things. So that's kind of the question where I'm going with that.
Sure, and absolutely, we'll look into that. The other part of this too is that Sammy had mentioned it for emergency purposes, but we're also looking at accessibility for all students. And so what we've even started to do last summer when we were putting in the new playgrounds, even though certain things are ADA compliant, such as wood chips, they're not necessarily truly fully accessible for all students. And so as we've started to think more about these new spaces for students where we've considered the special playground, bottoms, those types of things, when we're talking about these shared spaces, we take a lot into consideration for accessibility. So grass, while it's great, like can be phenomenal, and some of these spaces I'm sure we can look at just keeping it some more of that natural service, but if we're really, surface, excuse me, but if we're really gonna use it for other things, like I can see the dining courtyard potentially being used for like an outdoor music event, or the amphitheater being used for that. That's some of the things that we discussed with Willow as well. So we just wanna make sure that all have access to it without there being too much of a barrier to it, but I think there's a way to do both in some spaces, so, yeah.
Yes?
How exactly would getting to the basketball court currently laid out is accessible? How do you see a way of it being accessible currently?
Yep, so there's the walking path. So everything that's in gray around the playgrounds, around the playfield, down and around the Gaga pit next to the basketball court, all of that is a walking path.
Yeah, but that's fenced in.
Yeah, we'll.
Oh, there will be gates in
The
there.
gates and things that
Oh, yeah,
haven't
there's
been
gates
fully
opening.
developed yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, there would be gates, both in the perimeter fencing and the basketball fencing and the pre-K playground fencing that would allow access to the different parts of the
And
site.
the fence is just around the basketball court to stop the basketballs from going everywhere.
Yep.
So that's the purpose. Or pickleball, if people want to play pickleball, or whatever it might be.
So just,
Yep.
for my own clarity, so the entrance would be from currently from the left-hand side, from where the pathway is, the walkway?
Currently, and that's not to say that, like, this is very early on in terms of the site plan schematic, so if you had a different thought on that, please let us know. But yeah, right now, that's what we're showing. Is there a concern? I know we talked about with the fence. So again, the idea with the fence is to prioritize the student safety during the school day. That doesn't mean that the community can't use these spaces after hours. I didn't know if your thought was maybe going to community access to the basketball if someone was coming from off the property.
It was just visually, it was confusing, because I saw the fencing and I was like,
Yeah, there'll be gates in all of the fences that haven't been laid out yet.
Is there these three playgrounds, is that an age thing? Is that
Yeah, so the pre-K playground has to be a dedicated playground space, so that is geared specifically for the pre-K. These are sort of geared so that the smaller one to the north is the younger equipment, more around the K2, K3 grade level, and then the larger playground would be kind of third grade and above, give or take. Those ones aren't fenced in, those ones aren't physically separated, but the larger play structures there would be geared more towards those age levels. Any other questions? Anything online, Lori? Okay. Again, we already looked at that. Last slide I have for you, and then we can circle back if there's any questions. Again, talking about sustainable approaches on this site under consideration. So again, lots of factors go into making these decisions: maintainability, accessibility, cost, and sustainability. But some of the things we're currently looking at or considering would be, again, to minimize those paved surfaces. So if we find opportunities to scale back there, I think that's definitely on the table. Going to something that is a porous paved surface, like permeable pavers. Pave drying is a named brand product, but something along that vein is something we could look at. Doing natural measures on site that minimize our stormwater system, like bioretention or rain gardens. Again, dependent on the soil conditions and the storm drain patterns, but something we're considering. And then it sort of goes without saying that the district would be looking to do drought-tolerant native plants. This is always a big, across all school districts, where we very rarely see, sprinklering or irrigation on a school site, and we're looking to minimize maintenance needs for the district as well. So those are definitely at the top of mind. If you've got other thoughts here you'd like us to think about, we can definitely add to that list and take them into consideration in terms of site sustainability. Yes.
General question, this all looks pretty good. You packed in a lot in the existing school-owned property. Is there, in the process of doing this, are there things about it that if you didn't use this space down here,
Yeah, so I'll let Christina weigh on this too, but for the most part, I think we're just focused on the school property right now, given the constraints we have, knowing that we have access to that and can make decisions about it, and that getting another piece of property wouldn't be hindering our timeline in any way. I think that given our budget and knowing that our budget is already tight, to take on more site to develop under the same budget that we have would mean that we would have to spread things even thinner in terms of where we're spending our money. I think in terms of what we've got here, we've got a pretty efficient layout right now. Obviously, there's always the opportunity to add more if the budget and site allows, but I don't think there's anything that we're really compromising on the quality of to put it all onto the school property site. We have a little bit more massaging to do to make the grading work, having the tighter site, but we're working with our civil team to do that. I've already been working back and forth with them about, like, we had the running track up, east to west, and we moved it up because it would work better for grading. So we're already kind of massaging things to make the most of what we can with the site we've got.
It seems like there's going to be a little bit more of less green space between the road and the school for those that live across the street from the school, but maybe not.
Yeah, it is definitely pushed up closer to, let me go back to the site plan, closer to Lewton. That's what you're referring to, right? Yes, absolutely it is. So I don't know if I hit on this yet or not, but to touch on it again, if I didn't, is we do have some elevation change on the site working from west to east. It is a relatively flat site, but as you get further down this way, there is a fair amount of grade change. And because we have a building that we're trying to keep all on the same level, and it is stretching the entire distance of the site from east to west, that means that the further we can push this building to the east, the more likely we are to avoid having to drop this classroom wing down a couple of feet. And also, like, some of the options we were looking at was that ramping and stairs there, but also having to expose some of the foundation on that side, which can be done, but has added cost to it. And then potentially having to have a steeper drop off on the site, which is less than ideal. So part of the goal of shifting things this way is to save cost, do a better and more efficient design over here with that. Anything else?
Is there any possible, do you have any elevations of the exterior of what you're laying out right now?
We do not at the moment. That is the next step. Since today seems to be going well so far, we'll dive right into that next. The biggest thing is that's really challenging to do without having a layout kind of more or less locked in and confirmed, because it changes all sorts of things about proportion in the building. So that's definitely where we're headed immediately next on this. So we've got a lot to consider there if you've got thoughts you want to throw in right up at the start of it, but we don't have anything today to share on that. Yes. We're balancing a couple different design ideas that we're looking to work through. So being that it's a Spanish immersion school, we've taken that into consideration and are trying to figure out a way to play off of that in a way that makes sense for Michigan and a school. So a lot of Spanish architecture has like the stucco walls and a terracotta roof, which are like building systems that aren't super appropriate for a school in Michigan. So we are looking and drawing design inspiration from other projects and things like that that has a taste of that Spanish flair to it. But also balancing that against something that's appropriate for Michigan, appropriate for the neighborhood, appropriate durability and cost in building materials. We're also so like on Willow, for example, each of the buildings has like an identifiable color to kind of create that sense of identity between buildings. Now that we're back to one building here, we're kind of weighing the benefits of anything like that, if there's any logic in creating kind of a distinguishable look for these different pieces of the building from the outside, or if it makes more sense for everything to be more uniform. We're looking at tying in district colors and the school colors, so blues and the blues and greens that are in Lewton colors are all at the top of our mind. But yeah, right now that's all I can share. But if you have thoughts you want to add, literally tomorrow I'm working on what it'll look like in 3D, so get them in my head fresh.
Which is from the layout, since you said now the entrance is on Hope Avenue, right?
Yep, this is the main entrance right here.
Or on Hope,
Yep.
And maybe just because this is the first time we've been to this meeting, and that kid is in pre-K, so it's
Oh, okay.
affecting me for a long term.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your board plan, and it just looks very linear for the entrance, and it looks, I'm sorry, but to me, it looks very foreign, like very plain.
There's lots of,
The only
yeah.
thing that I think of is a massive wall running across the entire span of the school, and that's why I was asking if we had elevation, so maybe I could imagine it. Because
Yeah.
right now, I just see a big run. with
Nope,
a
that's
little
fair.
slab for the entrance. That's all I picture in my mind.
Sure. No, that's fair. I think there's definitely ways to break that up with the different introduction of different materials, creating kind of between windows and maybe 2 or 3 materials on the exterior that creates kind of a sense of rhythm and breaks that down into a smaller scale. So we'll definitely be looking at that. We also, again, on Willow, where we prioritized natural lighting and kind of the solar aspects of it, we had angled roof planes versus roof planes, or flat roof planes, which is something that we'll be looking at here too, whether we do a big flat roof or we start to break this up in scale with some pitched roofs. So that'll be taken into account. I think that can help break down the scale a lot. The other way to create scale in an exterior of the building is to create actual, projections, columns or things that push out. As you start to create more jogs and corners in the building, that adds costs to it as well. So we'll probably try to avoid that as much as possible, but between materiality and breaking down roof planes and kind of creating a sense of pattern and scale with windows and materials, we'll definitely be keeping that in mind as we approach it. Yeah.
So you've talked about the budget a little bit, and there's a lot of really good things in here, I think that we're feeling pretty good about. Can you talk about the process and the strategy that will be used to start to chip away at things? So for example, we're all like, this is awesome, but then, you start chipping away, should we expect to see certain features off, on the chopping block first? Can you talk about strategy?
I definitely can, and I'll turn it back to say, if there's anything that you are most willing to part with, please throw it out there. The building square footage is more expensive than the site square footage, right? So I'll say that as part one. That being said, we also try to do our best to keep the program spaces whenever we can, so not lose actual classrooms or spaces. That's not to say things like that won't disappear, but those are kind of things we try to minimize. The reality of where we're at right now is there's a potential that will be quite a bit over budget. We have an SD, we're working through design through November that will then be estimated. That will be the first round of estimating on the project. That's our schematic design phase. So the Chrisman team will put together a very, very detailed estimate on that based on what we have and a number of assumptions we have from past construction projects, as recent as Willow and the districts, and just knowing what the district's expectations are for some of those things as well. What we do then, once we get that budget number back, is called a value engineering list, or VE list, and basically all of us collectively as a group are looking to put ideas on the table about where we can save money with having the most minuscule amount of impact, where we can make the least amount of negative impact while making a change. So sometimes that's as easy as, hey, Sammy, you picked a really expensive brick, and can you pick one that's less expensive? And we can still get the same exact building, just with a different brick, right? Sometimes it's reducing glazing. Sometimes it's changing mechanical systems. Sometimes it's changing light fixtures. There's a whole host of things that once we have that detailed information, we can say, ooh, that seems high, or ooh, it seems like we can find a more cost-effective way to do that. And those are all on the table for discussion. And then it becomes a prioritization of what are those big things, if necessary, that can get us down to budget, while also what are the things that make the least amount of negative impact to eliminate. To be honest, we'll probably be looking at some site things here, which are smaller in the cost, but we want to prioritize getting you the building you need first before we create a ton of extra amenities across the site that could always be added later. Those are things that are easy to be added later versus, cutting a big chunk out of the building that it's much more challenging to add back later. There's also an approach that's kind of a shrinking, if you will, which is where you're not cutting any particular space, but say, hey, if we cut a foot across out of that classroom, a foot across out of that classroom, just for example, right, and just tighten everything up a little bit, gets you all your spaces still, but just slightly smaller, and not to the point that they're not usable, just slightly less spacious as we're showing them now. That can sometimes be substantial in the amount of square footage we're able to save as well. So that's a lot of different ways to approach it.
On the idea of square footage, how was this gym size determined? If you know, would you say is it double what we're in now? Triple?
I don't know
Is it a high
exactly.
school type?
It's a competition middle school size gym, so definitely
Much smaller than a high school gym. Yes.
Smaller
so
than a
it's
high school. Yeah, go ahead.
So
Smaller
high
than
school
a
gyms have a lot more space on the sides because they have all the bleachers that pull out, and you can go 3x, 4x sometimes on the basketball, like the sideways basketball courts. So this is a 2x, like going edge to edge, and then 2 here. So yes, definitely bigger than this space, but can compete cross-district, cross-state, whatever, for middle school sports as well. And then only a couple rows of bleachers, so not as extensive as a high school gym by any means.
Yep.
That would be a question for your principal, and I'm not sure what it is. I know there's a couple of things that he had mentioned, like cross-country, and they were starting to start a basketball team.
Yeah.
So they were asking if you guys compete in any sports right now.
At a middle school level.
Cross-country.
We share most sports with White Ridge.
Yep. So right now we've got multiple. We're also in the district, just sidebar really quick, trying to rebuild all of our elementary and middle school sports programs. And so this is a rebuild moment at this point in time. Having a competition-sized gym will allow Lewton School itself to have their own physical teams with enough students. So. We're starting to. Yep. So right now, if you were to drive to the south side further, Atwood is getting an addition currently. More likely than not, Wexford will be getting that addition as well. Pattengill has a full middle school sized gym. This will be a full middle school. So yes, we are moving that direction district wide.
And Willow as well.
Yeah, Willow will have one. Dwight Rich already has one. Gardner already has 2 gyms actually. Mount Hope will have a middle school sized gym.
I'm not against the gym if it's gonna be used, that's why I'm asking if they compete, because if they're not competing and it's not going to be used, then I don't really see the, you know what I mean? The resources spending the money on that size gym if it's not gonna be utilized to its full potential.
Right. So we also use.
Schools that can be used hard.
Sorry. No, that's okay.
Maybe other schools that they go to, but
Right.
it is something that's going to be used in the future and they're developing the sports to compete, then yeah, I guess it's fine, but otherwise, right now, it's just asking and don't really see that there's any practical going on.
Yeah, no, not right now. So, right had mentioned that we're rebuilding athletics district wide. So, rebuilding those middle school programs. In addition, the gym can be used for multiple other things. So, I know the Lewton does a lot of cultural things maybe the cafeteria won't be big enough. Science fairs, if you think about kind of some of the outside of just the athletics, family nights, all different kinds of things, carnivals.
Thinking, so I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
First reaction when I saw your plan was, I thought the cafeteria was too small and the gym was too big. That's the first thing that I thought. I was like, the cafeteria was really small, but it might be just.
It is. You can host 3 lunches a day there. Probably we could, well, not 2, but you can get pretty close. Like three lunches a day. That cafeteria will fit. You can do 3 lunches all day long. So
To
it's not.
capture the full student
It is
body, yeah.
bigger than this space.
It's kind of confusing since there's like no dimension thing. and
Correct.
I can't really stop looking at it and comparing it to other squares, I guess, so it's kind of hard to, but I guess it's fine. You're saying it's bigger than this, then.
Yep, and the other part is too, is like what happens right now in this space that is also used as a cafeteria, students get served inside of this space, students will be served outside of the cafeteria. So where that kitchen space is, where that servery is, students come through there with their, and get their meals and then come into the cafeteria. Yep.
I guess I started this sort of conversation that similar to what she's saying, kind of like the cafeteria. Oh, is it big enough? And boy, that's a really good gym. But knowing that it's middle school, not high school helps. But then the art, science, music, and library seem to be all about the same size right now. Is that accurate? Or am I?
Close. Art and science might be on the little bit bigger side. Libraries, probably in the middle, and music might be slightly smaller than that. But yeah, roughly all in the 900 to 1,200 square foot range.
I would just make a comment that hopefully that all the examples you gave about less expensive bread, change this and change that would be all first before you made, art and smaller and these, that.
That's always the library will stay. The library has been heard loud and clear as a priority. That's our hope too, but we've got a budget we've got to face. Just for the sake of pointing out, like Christina said, we're about 10,000 square foot larger than Willow right now. That is partially due to the fact we have about, I think, 6 spaces we determined, significantly sized spaces that Willow doesn't have here. So that's really driving that. Being the 3 resource rooms, the ESL room, the library, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's it. So those are driving up the square footage, which means that if we want to keep all of those, that means we have to make sacrifices elsewhere to get the budget in line, meaning site amenities, meaning shrinking some other things. If we get to keep all of those spaces, we may or may not be able to, but the library will stay. That was a top priority, so that one's there. All right, well, if there's nothing else urgent, I think we're gonna wrap up. So thank you everyone who joined us online and in person. Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Can you tell us what the next steps are, as far as like, so you do the budget stuff in November, and then what the next expectation is?
I can, and then you can add. Yep, so again, diving right in tomorrow, we're gonna see if there's some easy spots to tighten things up, so before we go into 3D. And then we will be focusing on developing the building in 3D. What is it gonna look like? How is it gonna be built? What kind of building materials? Similarly, our consultants will be working on what the mechanical systems look like, the engineering systems in the building, putting that together in what we call a schematic design package that we're targeting to be due mid-November. The Chrisman team will then have 4 weeks to review all of those documents and put together an estimate, meaning that we'll be reviewing the estimate right before the Christmas holiday. I believe the intention from the district is to come back to you all after that point, after we hopefully rectify that budget, or if we need input to weigh in and make some of those critical decisions about how we get that budget in line, probably around the start of the year, I would say January or February-ish. Does that sound right, Christina?
Yeah, it does. So we'll obviously take everything we can, make small changes that we need to, just knowing that it's going to be over the 40 million as it sits right now, and then start making some of those design decisions, and then come back with kind of a, this is what we're doing. It'll probably be around that February mark.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you coming out, and hopefully we'll see you back in February. Thanks, guys.